Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Cārvāka podcast. This is your host, Kushalmehra. All right, today we are going to talk about a very interesting paper. I'm just going to share it on the screen. This was written by Gautam. It's called India is Not Your Inequality Story. India's rise as the fourth largest economy arguably reflects one of the most robust and inclusive models of economic policy making. I just read this paper a couple of, maybe more than a couple of days ago, like 4 or 5 days ago. I don't remember the exact date. I found it very interesting and I reached out to Gautam. And as always, Gautam first says no to everything I say. And then I yell at him on the phone. Then he says yes. Welcome, Gautam.
You are an intellectual terrorist, that's why. Anyway, namaste and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
I'm still very nervous. You know I have camera fright, so please be kind to me.
देख मैं क्या करूंगा मैं तेरे को इस पूरे पॉडकास्ट में ट्रोल करूंगा ताकि बाद में मोनिका कैन एटलीस्ट हैव फन.
ठीक है. ये हिंदी में भी बात कर सकते हैं, अंग्रेजी में भी.
अरे हिंदी और अंग्रेजी दोनों में करना है मगर on a very serious note, first of all, I want to congratulate you. This was a wonderful paper. I loved reading it. The moment I read it, I immediately called you. This is the kind of discussion that probably the Indian mainstream should be having, but the Indian mainstream is never going to pick it up because these things are not clickbaity. These things are serious things. These things involve a lot of effort. So first of all, my first question to you is, how did you happen to think I need to write something about this? I need to do some research on this. Maybe spend some time in explaining that.
So, for me, it's pretty normal to track economic indicators, which I do. And if you have been tracking the Gini coefficient, which is what the paper is all about, the article is all about, you would know that World Bank, they update their data. It's called the Poverty and Inequality Platform. They update this platform every 6 months approximately. So this time they updated it in June. I saw the update and re-looked at what data had come, arranged it together, analyzed it, and wrote a piece. What I'm surprised, maybe a little shocked, is that people who earn a livelihood on poverty, as in poverty analysis, haven't written anything on this change, on this update of June 2025. These updates are pretty normal, by the way. The last update was September 24. Before that was March 24, and so on. Mostly they do it in March and September, except in 2022 when they did it in April, and in 2025 when they have done it in June. So if you are tracking data, then it becomes some sort of a good practice to just go and check out if anything has changed. GDP numbers have changed, growth rates have changed, inequality data has changed or not. And it's just a business as usual for any economic tracker of economics. So that's how I got this data. Somebody tweeted it and I looked at it and sab theek hai. So, but when I began to enter this data, that's when the surprise happened. And that's where the rest of the story is.
All right. So I want to talk to you about Thomas Piketty's work. I know it has nothing to do with this, but that has been the most cited work in the growing inequality across the world. And he cites India as one of his major examples to prove that, India is a prime example of how the rich in India keep getting richer, everybody else is getting poorer. And that is Thomas Piketty's work. And we, we even looked at it when Surjit Bhalla and Karan Bhasin's paper had come out, and they also had debunked a lot of what Thomas Piketty has claimed. I don't know if you've read that work, but I have covered 3 or 4 papers of Dr. Bhalla and Karan too. But
yeah, I read that paper about that poverty
wala, yes,
falling
yes,
to 1.4, 1.6% or something.
Yes,
extreme poverty, not poverty.
Extreme poverty. So even there, they have kind of debunked a lot of things that Thomas Piketty has claimed. Now, your is actually, to be very honest, Gautam, your paper actually is at the heart of his argument. You actually are hitting the heart of Thomas Piketty's argument, and I don't want to make it about him. But see, he's a well-respected person in these discussions, right? His name is dropped a lot of times. So how are we drawing these different conclusions over here?
I don't know. Frankly, After a point, I have stopped reading other people's analysis, particularly when I see an inherent bias. You can sense it now with all this white hair on my head. I can sense a bias from the first paragraph itself. Anyway, I don't want to debunk Piketty. I don't know what he is, so I plead guilty to not knowing anything about his work other than the fact that he trashes India. I am only talking about looking at primary data, and that's what I do. I only study primary data. I am not interested in anybody else's opinions. I trust no one. In this age of fake news, fake data, fake analysis, I trust nobody. I go to primary sources, and even there, as credible a source as possible. For instance, the data released by governments of US, EU, India, and so on. So that is one set of credible data. It's credible because we are in a democracy, and if there is any problem, that data can be questioned and changed and can be fixed, and that's what democracy is all about. Then I lean on multilateral agencies such as World Bank, IMF, ADB. ADB not so much, but definitely World Bank and IMF, where they come out regularly with various data feeds and which supports the entire, let's say, international economics relations analysis, which is what I do. And this is the only data that I rely on. This is the only data I study. I am not interested in those random reports that have been coming over the past 2 or 3 days based on a LinkedIn post that suggest that 40% of assets are owned by 1% of India, etc., etc. I don't know the methodology. It seems absolutely implausible to me for such kind of divergence to happen, such kind of huge inequality. It's not possible, and I don't waste my time on those kind of data. If they offer that data to me, I will study it on my own. I will come to my own conclusions, and I may agree or disagree with their analysis. I don't think that data is credible. I look at credible data, which is World Bank, IMF, and government sources. In that data, this article that I've written is based on that data, which I was telling you. The data update happened in June. I caught it. I studied it, and I was absolutely delighted. On the one side, I was extremely skeptical, Kushal. I thought maybe World Bank has made an error because it is counterintuitive to everything that we have been fed so far, including World Bank's own previous data, in which India's Gini index stood at 32.8. I remember that because I had written a piece on that as well. From 32.8.
Can you explain what a Gini coefficient is for noobs? Let's assume they don't know what it is.
Gini index or Gini coefficient is an index that measures the extent to which the distribution of income or consumption by households in a particular economy deviates from a perfectly equal distribution, which means if a Gini index is 0, it shows perfect equality. Everybody in that economy has the same income, has the same consumption. 100% is perfect inequality. So if there are 1.5 billion people in India, one person owns all the income, all the rest have no income. So that is perfect inequality. That's what a Gini signifies. So when I saw the Gini coefficient fall from 32.8 to 25.6, yeah. Is it 25? One sec, let me just check. 25.5. I was shocked. I couldn't believe, but it was there. I checked, double checked. And, like after all these years, even now, I lack that absolute blind conviction, even in myself, because I would cross-question every data, and therefore I would cross-question Gautam Chikermane as well. And I was wondering whether a higher Gini coefficient is better than a lower one. I double-checked, read again, and realized, no, that's not the case. This is actually hard data, and there has been a shift in methodology in the way that World Bank now calculates this data. And in that calculation, India is at number 4. We are the 4th most egalitarian society in the world, apart from being the 4th largest economy of the world.
Now I want to put this screen up. This is actually an image from your very report, your article in on ORF online. Um, so you're talking about ranking countries based on how equal or unequal they are. Obviously, Slovak Republic, Slovenia, Belarus are the low inequality three countries. Moderately low inequality countries may India, Ukraine, Netherlands, yeah, Moldova, UAE,
At the
pretty,
bottom is your country, Canada, in this list.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, so Canada is still like in the areas where, and the high
Moderately.
inequality countries are Nepal, Croatia, Hungary, Fiji, Myanmar, Austria, Ethiopia, France. France is there. I'm surprised. France and
Sweden is there, Germany is there, Japan is there, UK is there.
where are our
Lots of
beautiful neighbors? Pakistan is I'm what
many
I was.
surprises are there.
Yeah, Israel, which was very surprising to me, and highly unequal countries. Obviously, you had the expected names. Now, uh, this question should be asked to everyone who is a researcher. What would have made your claim falsified?
Uh, Sorry, I lost you. What do you mean by that? What would have been my
मतलब क्या
claim?
ऐसी चीज होती थी जिससे आपका क्लेम गलत साबित होगा?
ये ये पॉसिबल नहीं है यार। मतलब माय डेटा इज हैज ऑलवेज बीन एक्यूरेट। मैं तो 10 बार उसको चेक करता हूँ एंड इस बार तो मैंने 50 बार चेक किया।
Hmm.
So my data cannot be wrong. The only thing that can be wrong is the data itself is wrong, which I don't think is possible because, like me, World Bank, much better than me, World Bank has an army of economists, and they
Hmm.
are not going to make these fundamental errors in putting out public data. And if they do, then they would correct it. And if they haven't, it means it's probably right. Or if it is wrong, there will be some economists questioning them, and there would be a correction in September. I don't know. I'm only looking at what data in the latest update, which is of June 2025, has been placed before us. I'm analyzing it and putting it for everybody to read. I'm actually quite disappointed that nobody in the Indian media has taken this data and taken it forward, even questioned it. Even if you say this data is all wrong, nobody has even questioned it. So I think it's just lost in the, what should I say, lost in politics.
You know what the irony of this entire thing is? I think what you have shared in this report on ORF is probably one of the most important things. But such is the state of affairs of discourse globally now. Let me be very honest, it's a global state of affairs. It's not like it's something unique to India. It is so pathetic that they are busy arguing about things that don't really matter to an average person's life. Well, something like this, because the natural questions that come out of this, let's say if India is number 4 in this in this Gini coefficient inequality data, the natural question should be what are the policies that led to it? That should be the natural question that anybody would pick up and ask you, right? What are the policies that the government of India has come up with, and how have they managed this? So, did you do any research on that? Did you try to study that bit?
Yeah, I've written a whole book. I think, did we talk about it here
Yeah,
or not?
we have. इसीलिए तो पूछा
Reform
भाई
Nation.
बता.
Reform Nation. I know we talked about the Sri Aurobindo book. I don't remember Reform Nation.
No,
Did we
we
talk
have
about that?
discussed Reform Nation also. We have
Yeah,
discussed
in that
Reform Nation.
you will see a lot of policies. Now, when I map the two, which is all the policies that have happened since independence, and the current data, and in fact, this has been my big problem for more than 2 decades. I continue to see, although it's begun to change now, that there has been a far greater thrust on wealth redistribution policies rather than wealth creation policies. In the last decade or so, last 15 years, after 1991 reforms, in the last decade, I've seen an acceleration towards encouraging wealth creation. It's not adequate, it's not enough. That other book, Jailed for Doing Business, and the compliances Raj and the inspector corruption, etc. They're all there. But yet, I think the government has been able to steer the economy towards wealth creation as well. The ironic part is that India began wealth redistribution without having the wealth in its pocket. And now we have wealth in our pocket and we are redistributing more and more of it, which is okay as long as we continue to grow and as long as we continue to allow our entrepreneurs to thrive. I think that is now happening. It's not enough. More needs to be done. I will continue to push for wealth creation policies because wealth redistribution, we have absolutely, I think we have perfected wealth redistribution. Now it's a question of wealth creation. And if you look at other countries in this own database, United States, Finland, Scandinavia, Nordic countries, Europe, Japan, South Korea, all of them first created wealth, first grew their GDPs, then brought in the welfare policies. Redistribution happened after wealth was created. In India's case, we began wealth redistribution from the resolution of 1948. And since then, we have been continuing to do it. It's only in 1991 that we began to open a window for wealth creation, which over the past 10 or 15 years has accelerated to the extent that we are now the world's fourth largest economy, going faster.
All right. So if I was to ask you, I know you've listed many policies in that book that you've written, and we have covered it. But you've said that India has probably done the wealth distribution bit through policies very efficiently. How? Can you narrate that bit a little more?
Yeah, apart from specific policies which I'll list out, healthcare in government hospital has been free for every citizen right from independence. Education is now free in government schools. Right to education is there. Before that also it was free. Now uniforms are being given. Food is free. Food has been given. Mahatma Gandhi Narega is there for all to see. The Jan Dhan Yojana, which is the world's largest financial inclusion scheme, happened in 2014. It was the first scheme, by the way, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi initiated in his first term. There are several other such free food is continuing to happen. States have their own redistribution policies and so on. So I think redistribution has been the backbone. And I can understand why, because we are a democracy and we did not choose that only the elite will vote and the mass will not vote in 1947. Everybody has the right to vote. And in a country that as poor as ours, wealth redistribution would demand a political asylum. And that's what various governments across over the past 76 years have delivered. So wealth redistribution is important for staying in power, for democracy. Wealth creation is important for capitalism. And India shows a nice mix. When I look today at these coefficients, etc., it shows a nice mix of democracy and capitalism working in tandem.
Now, what do you make of the criticism of the government of India that this Revdi culture is there in the entire length and breadth of India, whether it's a central government or whether it's different state governments? Because, see, if we are talking about reduction of inequality, the only thing that can be done is through welfare state models. So, which is now popularly known as Revdi culture in India. So, how does one balance the two out? That would be a natural follow-up to this.
So I'm going to give you a list of some welfare schemes. Let us say universal healthcare, free or subsidized education, subsidized higher education, strong labor laws for protections, generous social programs like unemployment insurance, pensions, public housing. They all aim to provide social protection and inclusion against various risks like unemployment, sickness, disability, and old age. Tell me, which country am I talking about?
I would say almost every country now on planet Earth has these schemes.
I'm talking about Europe specifically. Okay. So if all these schemes are there in Europe as virtues of a great welfare state, why are the same schemes in India criticized? We provide free healthcare, free education. We have strong labor protections. There are schemes around pensions for old people, healthcare, and old age. Housing, there is housing, there is even entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurs, small entrepreneurs are also being financed. So why are these so-called experts uh, singing virtues of the European model and criticizing the Indian model when the base policies of both stand on the same pedestal? I can't understand this. I will never in my life be able to understand it. All I know is it's crap, and frankly, I don't care, and we must continue to do what we are doing and move forward.
But okay, now let us talk about the wealth creation bit. Now, this has been another criticism of the current government,
Can we
and
just stay on this this data for one more minute, Kushal?
sure, sure, sure.
There is some more parts which I could not write in that article, and I may write next time. But basically, I just wanted to put it out for you, which is that this fall in the Gini coefficient is consistent with several other related parameters. For instance, uh, the income share that is held by the highest 10%, okay, that's a parameter. In India, it is 22.1%. Tell me, is that good or bad? 10% of Indians, the top 10% of Indians get 22.1% of the income. Is this good or is this bad?
No, I think it's a net positive.
It's extremely positive. India ranks 13 out of 171 on this count. There are only 12 countries doing better than us. These are include Norway, Iceland, and Netherlands. But India is doing better than Canada, better than Japan, Finland, Denmark. US is at 114, where the top 10% have an income share of 30.4%. China is at 90, the top 10% have an income share of 28%. Germany is at 55, the top 10% have an income share of 25%. The worst is South Africa at 171, the top 10% have an income share of 50%. Okay, now let's go to the bottom 10%. In India, the share of income held by the lowest 10% is 4.5%. Is that good or bad?
Repeat it again. The lowest 10% share.
The poorest 10% of Indians have an income that is 4.5, have an income share of 4.5%. Is that
That's
good or
pretty.
bad?
That's pretty decent, I think.
It ranks number 2 out of 171. We are number 2 here. South Africa is worst at 0.9. The US is at 1.8. Denmark is at 3.6. Japan is at 2.4. We are at 4.5. And I can go on the top 20, the lowest 20, etc., etc. So the World Bank findings on Gini are not an isolated data entry error. I think if you look at the complete story of India, you will see several parameters come together. For instance, you mentioned Surjit Bhalla's and Karan Bhasin's paper. Poverty is now, extreme poverty has been virtually eliminated from India. The top 10, the bottom 10, the Gini. So there is you can see there is a consistency of these economic indicators around poverty, around poor, and how the country is. And I think this either is being deliberately ignored, or maybe because of like you can't believe it's too good to be true to be written. And I'm just sharing with you all this separate data. Yeah, we can go on to your question now.
No, so now I wanted to spend some time. Like, this is another criticism of the government, and I think this is where the fair criticism of the government comes in. I still think the bureaucratic nightmare that remains in India is very much a reality. I still think, and you, no, none better than you, because you have actually spoken against it a lot. We've covered it on the podcast also. Now, you rightly pointed out that wealth redistribution only happens when there is sufficient wealth creation. My biggest worry is that we have created these distribution policies, but we are not doing enough to create wealth in this country. Do you think we are?
I think we are moving towards wealth creation. The efficiency of the indirect taxes through the goods and services tax, howsoever clunky it may seem from the outside, is million times better than the 17 separate indirect taxes that an entrepreneur had to face before the GST had come. So you can crib about roti in the restaurant versus roti in a dhaba versus roti in a five-star, and the various taxes on it. But just remember, there were 17 such taxes, 17 that have been collapsed to make the GST. Or you can look at IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, under which before this there used to be bankrupt companies but rich promoters. Today that's not possible. The IBC makes sure that the money that the promoter has taken is returned or can be questioned and taken away, and so on. So there are several such corrections that have happened. I just don't know why compliances are being so difficult. I think it's the next big thing. They have already come out with the Jan Vishwas Amendment Act. This was based on our study. But unfortunately, they decriminalized only 113 out of 26,134 provisions. Jan Vishwas 2 is underway. I'm very hopeful that the government should move faster on it because all the other things are changing. For instance, the international arena, the geo-economics arena is changing. The US is demanding high tariffs. The US says we don't believe in WTO, everything will be bilateral, and these are the high tariffs, 500% tariffs, etc., that we will put on you. China has already broken the WTO, the back of WTO, by repeatedly breaching the various norms. If WTO is over and 1-to-1 is the new future, then how do we negotiate with the world's biggest dealer? The deal, give me a deal, is what is being asked for us. Second, there is a technological disruption that is happening. We saw the internet, we saw the apps, we saw the next level, and now we are in the middle of artificial intelligence as another disruptor. Join that with robotics, and that's another big disruption. Add drones to it, and your defense, the defense spending, the defense technology, the defense innovation changes. So this is another thing. In the US, they are talking about deregulating, doing business easier for American business people. In Europe, where I've been 4 times over the last, in this year alone, across various countries, in Brussels, in Greece, last in Finland, I can see that deregulation is a very crucial and very important and very well articulated agenda that is being discussed. They have not acted yet, but at least it's on the table. Up till now, they did not even discuss it. Now, when the whole world is deregulating, making doing business easier for their business people, and India continues to make it get locked into a status quo, then where do you think global capital will flow? But if I want to make a product and sell it, and if I have the world's largest market, which is the US, at my disposal, why will I not go to the US and start an enterprise than stay in India? And I know I'm being very simplistic. So let's say ceteris paribus. Why will I not go there? So if the world is getting simpler and India is remaining solidified in yesterday's compliances, it's a problem for us. Our next big reform should be on compliance reforms.
So compliance reforms, can you elaborate on that? I think it's very important to explain what we mean by compliance reforms. Like, I have lived my entire life being tortured by that, now no longer being tortured by it, as I am free from it and I am a full-time podcaster, but I know what compliance costs are and the torture of going through this entire compliance process is. So let's talk a little bit about that. Just example.
At an aggregate, according to our study, which we need to update and where I fear that the numbers may have increased. At an aggregate, the Indian business community, excuse me, the Indian business community faces 69,233 compliances. These are distributed among the union government and the state governments. Of these, 26,134 carry imprisonment clauses, of which 5,000 are with the union government, the rest are with the states. Many are concurrent. For instance, if you change something in labor, it will seep out there. The 4 labor codes have been enacted but not notified. The day that happens, we believe, our estimate is that compliances will fall by around 50%. Why are these important? Because the moment, and an entrepreneur doesn't want to be in the radar of compliances. He chooses to be small. A politically incorrect word, so he chooses to be a dwarf rather than grow. And the moment he or she tries to grow and get formalized, he faces a compliance avalanche of about 400 compliances, which means that approximately 24 lakh per annum he has to spend on a consultant, briber, labor inspector manager, health inspector manager, and so on and so forth. So better to stay away. Let us stay small. If my business grows, let me open another factory and in another person's name and do it there. So now, you know how many enterprises are there in India? 62 million. You know how many of them are formal? 1 million. Now imagine the scale if ease of doing business is brought to us and that 1 million simply becomes 2 million or 4 million or even 10 million. Imagine that. Imagine the government, imagine government policies, the execution of those policies, catalyzing India's strength as a geopolitical, geo-economic powerhouse, rather than scratching the skin of the entrepreneur who puts everything at risk just to bow down before some corrupt bureaucrat. Now, if these are removed, we believe that if the conceptualization of these compliances is eased, then there is less scope for rent seeking, less scope for corruption. And that's where we feel that growth will come from. The new energy of our young will be harnessed better. It will be more formal. It will be more organized. And I dare say it will create more jobs.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from. My biggest worry, listen, when I read this, I myself, I was like, Gautam kya bol raha hai? And then I was like, okay, let me see. The growth story in India right now is, and I hope people don't misunderstand me, but the growth story of India right now is because India literally had nothing, and in a lot of infrastructure and a lot of other peripheral things have been going on, and right now the economy has been pushed because of a lot of those factors. My biggest fear is coming the next 2 decades, if India does not do what you have literally said India should be doing, India will get stuck. That is my biggest fear, because the next big chunk of wealth generation, which would later on be redistributed, because wealth redistribution is the baseline of everyone around the globe now. Every country cannot survive without wealth redistribution. It just cannot. Even the United States of America, the so-called capitalist country of planet Earth, does a ton of wealth distribution. There is Medicare, Medicaid, and stuff like that. My biggest fear is that if India does not take this seriously, we are going to get stuck. That is my biggest fear. And even today, for an average person to do business in India, go and ask all my friends in the textile industry who still are in the textile industry. I still am in touch with them because I like to know what's happening in the industry and stuff like that. I may not know the daily rates of labor or coal now because I don't stay in touch about that, but I still am trying to understand where the industry is going. Right now the industry is doing very well is because Bangladesh ki band baji, and all the export orders of Bangladesh has come into their kitty. So especially people doing a lot of export are doing very well right now in India, the export textile walas. But yeah, compliance has not reduced. The torture, the baseline corruption has not reduced. A lot of these laws, Gautam, are at the state level. वहां पे real corruption होती है. Even if we fix the central level laws, right, we refine the central laws, असली मसाला तो स्टेट पे है.
No, suppose we do the labor laws, for instance, which is the Factories Act, for instance. Then, if the base act is not there, then the factories rules in the states will be redundant. So I think there is a lot of heavy lifting to be done by the union government. States can be taken care of later. For instance, Uttar Pradesh is now thinking of allowing more than 8 hour thing, or there is some amendment over there with overtime, etc. There are many other small, tiny changes that are happening. Some in Madhya Pradesh, but the baseline, the heavy lifting needs to be done by the union government. It needs to be followed up by BJP governed states, NDA governed states, and then perhaps through a process of what has been poetically defined as competitive. What's that word? Competitive, whatever. When states compete among themselves, then other states will
Competitive
also
federalism.
federalism. Yeah. So competitive federalism will ensure that if because every state now wants big investments, and if you recall how Tata Motors, when they were wanting to make the Nano, in 2 days shifted from West Bengal to Gujarat. That was competitive federalism at play. And I think that the states are wanting these big companies. The states are wanting these large jobs, because if small entrepreneur remains in the informal sector, the labor there will not get minimum wage. The labor there will not get protections. The environment there will not get protections. The food that will come out may not be sanitary, worthy of eating, and so on. So there are lots of things. We need to turn the 61 million unorganized, informal sector entrepreneurs forward. And for that, we have to make compliances far, far more easier. It's not going to be incremental. It has to be just butchered, particularly when you have competition from the US, EU coming at you.
Yeah, I think the biggest roadblock is going to be labor unions. And people don't know this. The largest labor union in this country is not a left-wing labor union. It's an RSS labor union. I'm
So
just putting it on
I think
record. People don't
the
know that.
government will need to bite the bullet, and I hope they do it quickly now, because before the next general election comes, they should just do it fast, because this is inevitable. Or else you should be ready for a slower growth rate. You should be ready for a greater black economy or a greater informal sector. So these are the choices today. In a digital world, I feel that staying below the radar may not be so easy. So if you want to grow, if you want jobs, if you want the votes of the young people, these reforms are not only essential, they are crucial. These are survival reforms.
Maybe this can be a last question. Actually, this live viewer has asked a very intelligent question. So somebody has raised this point. Do we need more states, like smaller states? Maybe that would lead to lesser state incompetence and more empowering and more reforms. Do you think that could be one of the solutions? I mean, it's an interesting question.
Puducherry is a small state. Goa is a small state. Delhi pretends to be a state, and I don't see any great efficiencies here. So I'm not certain that data corroborates whether small is beautiful. On the other hand, Uttar Pradesh has jumped from the 4th or 5th spot to the 2nd by state gross domestic product. And you can see that those big strides they are having, the big ambitions they are having, the great infrastructure that they are creating, the defense corridors that they are building right over there in before our eyes. So the virtues of small is beautiful may work for some petty politicians here and there, but I'm not sure whether in terms of outcomes, it delivers anything more efficient or better.
So do you think more urbanization is the eventual goal in India? That's what, usually how states function. Like there are major urban clusters around which the economy functions, and people like we need more NCR and MMRs in India. Do you think that is the future? Maybe that would lead to this change. And that's the last question before we wrap up.
Yeah, it is absolutely you cannot direct large cities through policies. They will come up on their own. What you can direct is that there will be a better organization of the new centers that come up. So rather than having our old kind of cities with slums on one side and few open areas, or look at Mumbai, for instance, where the open areas are virtually gone. It's more of managing the big cities. The policy should be able to manage a city into growth and be ready for growth, rather than create a new city. I don't think that's going to happen. On the other hand, I think agriculture is getting to be super profitable now, and you might see a reverse exodus in terms of capital going into agriculture. And of course, it's tax free, so that's the other advantage. But I think the agrarian market is remains an undiscovered, uncelebrated. And when we think of agriculture, we think of those farm laws and the kind of MSP and the kind of violence that happened. That's not true. There is a lot of capital flowing into agriculture. Agri tech is growing. So I think our model is going to be a mix of both. Urbanization certainly is going to happen, but it's not going to be at the cost of rural. Rural, if they are allowed to consolidate, may be a great idea, or have those 3 farm laws that were repealed needlessly. If they are brought back, I think you will see more efficiencies in the agriculture sector than ever before.
Yeah, but surely you can't have such a giant chunk of your population involved in agriculture, right?
That's what everybody suggests. But even there, the wages have been going up. When NREGA was launched, I think it was 2005 or 6, I don't recall the year. I had a friend who was a big farmer, wealthy farmer. He was a Congress supporter. He came from a political family of the Congress, and Congress had, under Manmohan Singh, had brought out the MG NREGA. I said, what a wonderful scheme! You know, it has actually changed the income of the poor. He said it's a crap scheme because now we don't get farm workers. We have to pay them more. So I said, that's in my mind. I said yes. I sympathized with him, but so these kind of changes have happened. I myself have been to Uttarakhand farmers, and I've seen how a mix of NREGA schemes and their own crop fruit, pears and peaches, etc. Because apples have gone further north because of climate change, working pretty well together. So I don't think agriculture is all that bad anymore.
Fair enough. Gautam, once again, thank you very much, and looking forward to your next work now.
Thank you, Kushal. Delighted to be here.
All right, guys, we'll wrap up. Once again, the link to this paper is there in the description of the podcast. If you want to read it, please go ahead, click the link, and go and read it. If you have any questions, Gautam's X handle is also there in the description of the podcast, so you can ask him a few questions about what if you have any potential questions, if you have any disagreements with Gautam. You know, we are more than happy to talk about these issues, is because this is what serious discussion is all about. So once again, thank you very much for tuning in. And as you know, this podcast does not do any advertisements or anything of that sort. So if you can support the Cārvāka podcast, do consider joining the membership program, whether on YouTube or on Patreon, or sending one-time donations through UPI or on Interac Canada. All the details are there in the description of the podcast. If you can't do anything, just like this video, subscribe to the Cārvāka podcast YouTube channel, and leave a rating on your preferred audio platform. I will see you guys next time. Until then, namaste, take care.